Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about our special senses. Senses such as vision, taste, hearing, smell, equilibrium. We'll start off with our vision. Let's talk about some of the accessory structures that we have, such as our eyebrows. Our eyebrows are there to prevent any sweat from entering into our eyes. Our eyelashes are pretty sensitive because their follicles are innervated by nerves. And that's why when anything touches your eyelashes, you feel it really quickly. And so they are pretty sensitive. There is this fleshy part right here at the medial corner of your eye, known as your lacrimal caruncle. And those lacrimal caruncles, they contain sebaceous glands, which are oil glands and sweat glands. And they release an oily secretion to keep our eyes moist. When you have your eyes closed for a period of time and you open it, you usually find those secretions dried out in the corner of your eye, and we refer to it as like the eye sand that would collect during the sleep. The white part of your eye is known as the sclera. And the sclera of your eyes, it's protected by a mucousy membrane known as the conjunctiva. The conjunctiva is a mucousy membrane that will protect your sclera. It covers your sclera, and it also, it's your conjunctiva, it's going to line the inside of your eyelids. And it releases a lubricant that keeps your eyes moist and prevents your eyes from drying out. When someone gets an infection to their conjunctiva, we refer to it as conjunctivitis, which is inflammation of your conjunctiva, which is pink eye, and it's highly contagious. Right here, this part is your iris, which is the colored part of your eye that contains pigments. It's made out of muscles. We will talk more about it in detail. In the middle of the iris, there is the pupil, and the pupil is actually just a hollow passageway that will allow the light to enter into your eye. Your iris and your pupil are not covered by the conjunctiva. The sclera of your eye, the white part of your eye, there are muscles attached to it, and those muscles are going to help you move your eyeball in different directions. In front of the iris, so here is the iris, and it's red because, as I said, it's made out of muscles. There is this dome-like structure known as the cornea, and the cornea is avascular, meaning it does not have any blood vessels, and that's why the cornea is actually easy to get. It's easy for someone to get a transplant of a cornea because the individual will not have a high risk of rejection since the cornea is avascular. The cornea acts as a clear window to let the light pass and enter into your eye. The front part of the cornea is actually protected by a layer of a stratified squamous epithelial tissue, and that stratified epithelial tissue can actually regenerate. And the reason why we have it covering the face of our cornea, it actually protects your cornea from any abrasion it might face. Here are the eyelids right here. On the inside of the eyelids, there are glands. Those glands right here, colored purple. They're not really purple in real life. Those are known as the tarsal glands. And the tarsal glands are glands that would release a lubricant to prevent your eyelids from actually sticking to each other. So that's why it's easy for us to blink and our eyelids would not stick to each other, because we have those tarsal glands right there. And the tarsal glands also helps lubricate your eyelids because they're made out of modified sebaceous glands. So one more time, they release those oily secretions. Next, we'll talk about our tears. Our tears are known as the lacrimal fluids. So lacrimal fluids are our tears produced by glands known as lacrimal glands, which are usually right here at the lateral corner of our eye. The lacrimal fluids, our tears, contains things like mucus, saline, which is basically like a salty solution. That's why if you've ever tasted your tears, it tastes salty. Your tears also contain antibodies to help protect your eyes from any infection it might face. Your tears also have enzymes that can help kill bacteria. Definitely your tears help keeps your eyes moist and lubricated. Your tears, they actually drain into your nasal cavity. So tears usually drain into the nasal cavity, and that's why when your nasal cavity is inflamed, you would notice that your eyes would tear up pretty quickly because the lacrimal fluid is actually accumulating in your eye. There are three layers for our eyes. We have a fibrous tunic. Tunic means a cover or a layer. We have the vascular layer, and we have the retina. The fibrous layer contains two parts. It's made up of the cornea, and it's made up of the sclera. Now, the sclera, it's, as we said, it's that white part of your eye, and the sclera helps shape your eyeball. And your sclera, this is where the eye muscles are going to attach. And as I said, those eye muscles are going to help you move your eye. The cornea, as we said, it's that dome-like structure that's covering your iris. And as we said, it's avascular, and it's pretty clear, allowing the light to pass directly into your eye. Next, we will talk about your vascular layer, which is made up of three parts: your iris, your ciliary body, and your choroid. So let's go ahead and zoom in on those parts and talk about them. Let's go ahead and take a look at the three parts that make up the vascular layer of our eyes. We have the choroid, the ciliary body, and the iris. So let's start with the choroid layer, which is that pink layer right here, deep to the sclera. So the sclera is right here, and here is that choroid layer. That choroid layer, it's rich in blood vessels, so it has a bunch of blood vessels that would help nourish the eye. It also has a bunch of pigments, brown pigments, and having that brown pigment is going to help absorb the light so that the light wouldn't scatter inside of your eye. So the light enters into your eye and it would actually go all the way deep into your eye. You don't want the light to start reflecting and scattering within your eye because that's going to cause visual confusion. So the choroid layer, having those pigments, can actually absorb that light. There is also another part of our vascular layer is a part known as the ciliary body. The ciliary body is a tissue that's usually found around close to your lens. So here is the lens right here, and the ciliary body is that region right here. The ciliary body, it's made out of muscles, smooth muscles to be exact, and those smooth muscles, they can actually contract and relax. And you would notice that coming out from the ciliary body, there are those ligaments right here known as the suspensory ligaments. And so when the ciliary body contracts and relaxes, those ligaments can either tighten or they can relax And when those ligaments tighten or relax, you notice that they are attached to the lens. And so they are going to be able to control the shape of your lens. So usually when you are looking at something far versus when you're looking at something near, the lens either flattens out or bulges, and that's due to those ligaments holding onto the lens, either getting stretched out or relaxing due to the contraction of the ciliary body muscles. The ciliary body also releases a fluid known as the aqueous humor, and that aqueous humor, it's a pretty nutritious fluid that's going to provide nutrition to the iris and to the cornea. And this fluid is usually going to flow, and it's going to be located in this region right here. This region right here is known as the anterior cavity. So within the anterior cavity, you would have that aqueous fluid, which is a pretty nutritious fluid, as I said. The anterior cavity is divided into two chambers. This chamber right here, right behind the cornea, is known as the anterior chamber. And then the chamber right here behind the iris is known as the posterior chamber. Both chambers make up your anterior cavity, and they're both going to be filled with that aqueous humor. The third layer that would make up your vascular layer of your eye is a part known as your iris, and the iris is the colored part of your eye. The iris, which is the colored part of your eye, contains pigment, the melanin pigment, and that's why we refer to it as the colored part of your eye. Depending on how much pigment you have in your iris, that's what's going to determine whether your eyes are going to appear darker in color or lighter in color. Your iris is made up of two muscles. Right here, the sphincter muscle, and this one right here, the dilator muscle. When those muscles contract, they will affect the size of your pupil. And as we said, the pupil is just an opening for the light to pass into your eye. Things that would control your pupil size is the amount of light that's going to hit your eye, the status of your mental states, whether you are relaxed or stressed out. So things that would constrict your pupils would be close vision, bright light, and if you are relaxed. Things that would dilate your pupils would be distant vision, if the light is dim, and if you are stressing out, your pupils would dilate because that dilator muscle will go ahead and contract, causing your pupils to dilate in size. The layer deep to the choroid layer is known as the retina. The retina is made up of two layers, the pigmented layer and the neural layer. The pigmented layer contains a bunch of pigments that would absorb the light and prevent it from scattering inside of your eye. The neural layer, it's made up of neurons and a bunch of receptor cells. The most important receptor cells that we have in our neural layer of our retina are the photoreceptor cells. We've got our rods and our cones. The rods would help you see when the light is dim. And so when the light is dim, you would notice that you can't really tell the color of objects, and the image is pretty hazy. So the rods cannot really help you detect color, and it cannot sharpen the image. The ones that can help you detect color and sharpen the image for you are the photoreceptors known as the cones. When someone is colorblind, they have a problem with their cones. When someone has night vision problems, then they have a problem with their rods. So this arrow right here shows you that the light is going to enter deep into your eye. So it's going to hit the cornea, pass into the pupil, make its way all the way deep into your eye. Um, your photoreceptors are the ones that are going to get triggered, and the message is going to pass from your photoreceptors, which are your rods and your cones, to those other neural cells known as the bipolar cells. Then the message is going to pass from the bipolar cells to the ganglion cells, which are going to pass the message to the optic nerve so that it can go to the visual center in the occipital lobe of your brain so that you would interpret what you just looked at. The pigmented layer and the neural layer of the retina, it's super important that they stay attached. If you have a detachment between the pigmented layer and the neural layer, that can cause blindness. An example that would cause your uh, retina to detach is a whiplash. When someone gets hit and their head um, moves forward very fast and then moves backward very fast, that can cause your retina layers to detach, and that can cause blindness. So this image shows you the sclera, which is the very superficial layer, then comes the choroid, and then comes the two layers of the retina. There's this region right here where the optic nerve exits to go to the visual center within your brain. This region right here is known as the optic disc, and the optic disc is also known as our blind spot. And the reason why it's the blind spot, because any light hitting that area, you're not going to have any visual input because this region is missing the photoreceptors. There are no rods and there are no cones in this region right here. This region right here, known as the fovea centralis, it is super important because this is where we have most of our cones. And as we said, the cones help you see color and it helps sharpen the image. So if the fovea centralis gets damaged, then you would notice that the images are pretty blurry and too much damage to the fovea centralis, and it would cause blindness. This image right here shows you the lens changing shape when you are looking at something far versus when you are looking at something near. We said that those suspensory ligaments coming out from your ciliary body will either stretch out or they will relax, causing your lens to change shape. So when those ciliary muscles they relax, those ligaments are actually going to get stretched out, causing your lens to flatten out. And usually this happens when we are looking at something that's pretty distant. When we are looking at something close, your lens would actually bulge out and kind of become more spherical in shape, and that's due to those ciliary muscles contracting and the ligaments relaxing. So that causes your lens to um, change change its shape, and that helps us look at near objects. And we refer to this as the accommodation. Accommodation is when you are looking at something close by. As we age, we actually start losing that accommodation property of our lens, so it's hard for your lens to actually bulge out like this and become more spherical as we age. And so as we age, it's going to become harder for us to actually um, look at, like, things that are really close. So you would notice that older individuals, they hold a paper pretty away from their face when they want it to be in focus. The anterior cavity of your eye, which is basically the region right here behind the cornea, and it's right here behind the iris. This whole entire part is the anterior chamber. The anterior chamber is usually filled with a fluid known as the aqueous humor, which is pretty nutritious to the eye and to the cornea, and it's made one more time by those ciliary body right here. That aqueous humor, we actually continuously make it, and we drain the old aqueous humor into our veins. If the aqueous humor is not drained properly and we are continuously making new aqueous humor, what's going to happen is that the pressure inside of your eye is going to increase, and that can cause damage to your optic nerve, which can lead to blindness. And this condition is known as glaucoma. Behind the lens, as you get closer, to the retina, etc., or the back of the eye, this is going to be the posterior cavity, and the posterior cavity of your eye contains what's known as the vitreous humor. And the vitreous humor, it's more of a gel-like consistency, fluid that's filling up that posterior cavity of your eye, and it keeps the shape of your eye. It helps you maintain the shape of your eye. We don't continuously make vitreous humor though. So that's the importance of the vitreous humor. It just maintains the shape of your eye.